Welcome to What is a Lutheran here at St. James Lutheran Church in Marion, Indiana. I'm Pastor Fred, and today we're talking about music, both contemporary Christian music in the church and hymns. I thought we'd take both sides in the worship wars today. Now, when we look at music in the church, it's a lot of times a source of controversy. I've been a pastor for close to 30 years, but the last 23 years, I've either done blended worship or totally contemporary, or contemporary and traditional at the same time. And here our first service is traditional. In other words, it's right out of the hymnal, straight with hymns. And our second worship is more of a blend with liturgy, although not sung liturgy, and contemporary Christian music. I would tell you that in the last 23 years, if I were to look at all the controversies I went through in churches as a pastor, I would say 75% of them or more were about contemporary Christian music. I've seen in other places even split congregations up, arguing not about hymns. Nobody seems to have a problem with hymns of the first service. It's always about contemporary Christian music. Nobody can agree on what it is. And that's the problem. Contemporary Christian music's been around since about the mid-70s. You kind of have to go into the late 70s to get some of the music. And so we've got about 50 years of contemporary Christian music. And no one can seem to agree on, exactly, what era we should be singing, what time zone we should be singing. For instance, I have people that come in and they'll say, well, I want to sing this one song, and I'll go, wow, that song's like 40 years old. They think it's contemporary. I have other people that want to sing songs they think are contemporary, but they're like 15 years old, which I don't know. And then there's some people that say, well, I don't like any of that stuff. I want what's on the radio right now. I want top 40 contemporary Christian music. So it's kind of like everybody's on a bus, and we're all traveling to heaven together, but everybody's fighting over the radio station. Some want, 70s disco. Some want 80s rock. Some want 90s grunge. Even with, I'm a country western fan, right? I like old country. This is the old country of Johnny Cash and all those guys. This is a new country, and I don't even know those guys' names. So that's the same way with contemporary Christian music. Everybody likes their type of contemporary Christian music because they're all different. Now, let me give you an example here. I'm going to read some songs, and I'll tell you what year they were out. Shine, Jesus, Shine. We all know that one, right? Shine, Jesus, Shine. 1988. That's what? 35 years ago. El Shaddai. That's a big one. Everybody liked to clap to that one. 1982. That's like 41 years ago. Lord, I lift your name on high. 1987. Great is the Lord and worthy of praise. 1985. I exalt thee. 1977, for crying out loud. That's 46 years old. As the deer pants for the water. 1984. Awesome God, putting on the Ritz. 1988. Let's move into the 90s. The Heart of Worship. Remember Matt Redman talking about how he shut off all the singing because people would concentrate on the worship? The Heart of Worship. 1999. 24 years old. I Love You, Lord. 1992. Celebrate, Jesus, celebrate. 1992. That's like what? 30 some years old. Better is One Day in Your Courts, 1998. Trading My Sorrows, 1998. I Could Sing of Your Love Forever, 1994. How Majestic Is Your Name in All the Earth, 1994. Those songs are 30-some years old. Now let's move to the 2000s. How Great Is Our God. Great song. 2004. Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, one of the most popular songs ever, 2006, 17 years old. Blessed Be Your Name, 2002, 21 years old. At the Cross by Hillsong, 2006. And my favorite contemporary Christian song of all time, Ancient Words, 2002, 21 years old. Now we could go on and get some of the other top 40, most of which I don't know. But my point is, that's a long time period. And a lot of the older people like those Shine, Jesus, Shine, El Shaddai, Awesome God. And the young people are going, yeah, those songs are so old. And the new songs are like, yeah, we like those. And the old people are going, those songs are way too different. Also, you might notice that a lot of the older songs are very much clapping and very fast, where the newer contemporary Christian music is much slower. Getty, for instance. If you go to a lot of your non-denominational churches, guess what? They're playing a lot slower, more toned down contemporary Christian music than some of the Lutheran churches that are populated by baby boomers who still want that 80s kind of rock and roll stuff. Now, I want to give you an example of how we choose songs and why we don't take some of them. Casting Crowns is a great band. Not so great when it comes to singing for church on Sunday. I'll give you 3 examples. What If His People Prayed is a song that came out by Casting Crowns. And it says, what if the armies of the Lord picked up the dust and dust off their swords, vowed to set the captives free, and let not Satan have no more? What if? And it continues to ask, what if, what if? That song is not a good song for Sunday morning because it's all law. And it basically makes you feel bad because, well, you didn't do any of that stuff, right? It's kind of like Jesus has got a belt and he's hitting you and you go, thank you, Jesus. Give me another. Let me feel guilt. It'd be like me preaching a sermon on Sunday morning, all law, and saying, amen. And everybody went out feeling guilty. They were going to hell. We don't want to do that. So that's all law, condemning law. Not proper for Sunday morning. Voice of Truth. Oh, that I would do to have the kind of faith that it takes to climb out of this boat that I'm in, into crashing waves. And then it goes in, but the voice of truth tells me a different story. The voice of truth says, do not be afraid. The voice of truth says, this is my glory. This is a really good song. This is a really excellent song. The problem is, it's really not set up for a congregation to sing. It's set up for like a soloist to sing the lyrics and then the congregation to come in on the chorus. And I've done it that way before, but it's really not the best song for Sunday morning. Sunday morning, you have songs that are group singings. There's a difference between what's on the radio and Christian music and worship music that's contemporary. Those are 2 different categories, and you got to be able to tell a difference, and a lot of people can't. Another one, Casting Crowns. Who am I? Who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name, would care to feel my hurt? Who am I but that the bright morning star? And he goes, not because of who I am, but because of who you've done. And this is an excellent song. This is a good song because everybody can sing it, and it's got law and gospel. It's all about God's gracious. That's a really good worship song for Sunday morning. So that's kind of how we look at that. Not every song is meant to be sung on Sunday that's necessarily played on the radio, or you may play on your devices at home. Okay. So I guess the point here, there's nothing wrong with contemporary Christian music. There just isn't. The difference is that people bring out is that hymns tend to be centered on more what Christ does. And contemporaries focused upon more on what man does. And in general, that's true. But it's not completely true. There are a lot of gospel-oriented contemporary music. So, yes, contemporary music does focus maybe sometimes a little bit more on man than God. But my question for that is, so what? Look at the Psalms in the Old Testament. The Old Testament book of Psalms is the song book of the Old Testament. Many of them are focused upon what man is doing in response to God's love. Many of them are, I talk about, I pray, I lift my hands, all those. So if the Psalms, the song book in the Bible, can have songs that are telling us what to do with that gospel message and also encouraging us to pray to God and do things in response to God's love, why can't we have music that does it as well? Just read the Psalms. If you say it always has to be God-centered and gospel-centered, then you got to throw a lot of the Psalms out of the Bible. You just got to declare them unscriptural. So the criticism doesn't hold water. Yeah, we need more songs, though, for those of you writing contemporary Christian music that are God-centered and man-centered. Now, if we could just all agree on what songs we're going to sing, what radio channel we're going to listen to this particular Sunday. So, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so let's talk about hymns. From my conversations with other pastors and working with my congregations, it seems that most congregations can only sing, well, about a third of the hymns that are in the hymnal. No kidding. And I had one pastor tell me that in his congregation, only about 25% of them can they sing. So that's 66 to 75% of the hymns in the hymnal that are really not sung on any particular Sunday morning by the vast majority of Missouri Synod congregations. And the vast majority of congregations are worshiping between 60 and 100. That's just the average Missouri Synod congregation right now. We're a little bit larger than that, but not much. So why is that? Why do we have so many hymns that we really can't sing? My opinion, I think it's based on fact, not just opinion, but it's put together by guys and gals with music degrees who happen to be in large enough congregations that probably have organists with degrees in organ, and they can play those. So before we complain about contemporary Christian music, why don't we put some more hymns in the hymnal that the average small congregation who don't have professional organists can actually sing? For instance, when they put out the hymnal, they came out with a list of hymns for every Sunday in the hymnal. These are our suggested hymns that you should sing on those Sundays. Now, in my last two churches, both organists have told me that those are not singable by the congregation. And we test them out anyway, right? And they're right. They're not singable by the congregation. I don't know who picked these, but whoever did, they're totally out of touch with the reality of the average LCMS congregation's musical ability. They're not singable. Maybe you've got a professional organist, 300 people worshiping on Sunday, a pastor with a music degree and a cantor, maybe. But that's not the average Missouri Synod congregations. But I have a suggestion. Don't just bring up a problem, bring a solution. I know how to correct this with the new hymnal. So take out a pen and write this down, those of you who are in charge of this. And so instead of ending up with 2/3 of a hymnal where hymns we can't sing, before CPH published the last catechism, they did a really brilliant thing. They put together a rough copy of it, and then they sent it out to every pastor in the Missouri Synod, like 6,000 of us. The guys who actually have to teach the catechism, who actually are on the front lines in the trenches in the dirt using the catechism. And we put it together, we took it in our circuits, and we shredded it. Basically, we tore parts out, put new stuff in, and then put it back to CPH. And guess what? CPH looked at the suggestions and actually used them and produced the best catechism ever produced by the Synod. Let's do that with the next hymnal, because you haven't done it before. Send the whole thing out in rough draft to all the congregations in the Synod. The ones that actually use the hymnal, that actually have to sing those liturgies and sing those hymns. And we'll go through it. We'll take a year, and we'll sing through this, and we'll shred it, tear parts out we don't like, and we'll pick the hymns that are actually playable and singable by the average Missouri Synod congregation. And we'll send it back to you, and we'll have the best hymnal ever produced. Also, guys, the era of the organ, over. Not because it's a bad instrument, but because no one knows how to play it anymore. I don't know, maybe we got to go to the ball fields like to Wrigley Field and get the guy that plays the organ there and bring him into church, because nobody's graduating with degrees in organ hardly at all. Nobody can play the thing. So we're doing it electronically. It's not all that great. So put the liturgy and the hymns in the piano and guitar and saxophone. I don't know, whatever instrument works. Flute, banjo, who cares? And let's spice it up a little bit. Let's put some bump and grind in those hymns and in that liturgy, and a little swagger in there. Shouldn't we have some joy in our worship? Some new tunes, guys. There's nothing sacred about those melodies and those tunes you put in there, all right? So in other words, stop boring us with those hymns. All right, said enough in here to make everybody mad, all right? Maybe we'll get more views that way. So that's music and some things we can do to improve it, and, well, my pain and agony over it. So I guess with our second service, let's have a little compassion and a little tolerance and we'll slowly learn all this stuff. And with the hymns, we'll slowly learn some more in spite of it.